What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so before I get into this video, I want to give a big shout out to the man, the myth, the legend, the brother Robert Mason coming through with another donation to the channel via the PayPal. Salute to you for showing love. A lover of old school basketball. He's primarily a Golden State Warrior fan, but he's also a big fan of Reggie Miller. And he asked me a question. He asked me about how many three-pointers per game, I guess. How prolific a three-point shooter, there was a better way of putting it, how prolific a three-point shooter would Reggie Miller be in today's game? Well, you know, look, Reggie Miller, of course, before Ray Allen, was the league's most prolific three-point shooter. He took over the all-time lead from three-pointers made from Dale Ellis, I believe it was during the 1997-98 season, and he remained the all-time leader until Ray Allen passed him, I believe it was in May in 2011. And for a little over a decade, I believe it was, Ray Allen remained the leader until he was surpassed by Steph Curry, and Steph is long past everybody. Steph, I believe, is not only the only player with 3,000 made three-pointers, but 4,000 made three-pointers. So I think James Harden is going to probably pass the 3,000 mark soon. But, you know, interestingly enough, Reggie Miller made 2,560 three-pointers, right? Attempted 6,000, I believe, 486. So he was a 39.5% career three-point shooter, which is still very good by today's standards. In the late 80s and 90s and 2000s when he played, when it was a little bit more difficult to get those types of shots off, especially if you were not just a catch and shoot guy, that percentage was even better. You know what I'm saying? Interestingly enough, though, Reggie Miller never led the NBA in three-point attempts. He never led the league in three-point attempts. He was usually somewhere between fourth and eighth. He was usually somewhere in that range. The best he ever finished was second in the 1992-93 season, and I believe he finished second to Dan Marley, then of the Phoenix Suns. His rookie year, he was tied for 10th, I think, with Joe Dumars. And then his second year, his sophomore year, he was 10th. And then generally speaking, from 89, 90 until early 2000s, he was usually somewhere between, although like I said, one year he was second. He was usually between third or fourth to sixth, seventh, and sometimes eighth. Because what we got to remember is there were other prolific three-point shooters at that time. They might not have all been as efficient as Reggie Miller, but you did have guys, contrary to popular opinion, who took a lot of threes for the era. It wasn't just Reggie Miller. You know, you had, for instance, Michael Adams. Michael Adams was not the marksman that Reggie Miller was, but he took a lot of threes, a lot of them. Matter of fact, I think one year he took something around 600 plus attempts. in the early 90s, which was a lot back then. Um, but he wasn't the most accurate. He was a 34% career 3-point shooter. Although he had nights where he would knock them down. Remember, you had briefly John Starks. He had the record for most 3-point attempts in the season, but Starks wasn't the most accurate 3-point shooter, 34%. You had George McLeod, who had 1 year set a record for most 3-point attempts in a season. I think it was 660 something or something. In the early 2000s, you had Antoine Walker, who was noted as a prolific 3-point shooter, but not always an accurate 3-point shooter. Some years he would lead the league in 3-point attempts, but only shoot 30% from downtown. So you had these other guys out there. Vernon Maxwell is another one that comes to mind. And Reggie didn't just shoot threes. Reggie had a really good mid-range jumper. Reggie, especially when he was younger, would occasionally drive to the basket. Not a lot, but he would drive to the basket. Sometimes Reggie would get transition layups. Sometimes even, the very occasional transition dunk. But the Pacers did not score a lot. This was an era where teams were, and I'm talking about the 90s now, the Pacers were usually amongst the lowest scoring teams in the league. And in the mid to late 90s, that's a league where scoring was starting to go down anyway. And even though there was, after they pushed the 3-point line in and overabundance of 3-point shots, Reggie didn't really still shoot a lot of them or more compared to the overall trend of the league. So how many would he take today? Well, the game would be more suited to him, and he would be more inclined to take more. I would guess if, in that league, he was always amongst the top 10, I guess he'd be amongst the top 10 in today's league. I think what would probably even go up even more with Reggie is that he wouldn't have to work so hard to get his shot off. He wouldn't have Joe Dumars and Michael Jordan and some of these elite defenders hounding him all the time. Derek Harper, you take the hand checking out, I think his 3-point percentage goes up more. I think instead of him shooting 39.5%, he's probably shooting around 41% for his career. I know it doesn't sound a lot, but it is a huge spike when you talk about careers. And I think he would take more. I don't know if he would shoot as many as Steph Curry because Reggie's a little bit bigger. Reggie's 6'7", 85, 190 pounds. Not huge. He's still a skinny guy, but he's a little bit bigger. I'm not certain that he would mimic Steph Curry and shooting as many long threes and half court threes. I think I don't know, man. I guess I'd put a number to it, man. Maybe 8, 9 attempts per game. I think his scoring would go way up, though. Like I said, the game would be more suited for him. So instead of Reggie averaging 18 to 22 points a night, I think he would average more around 26, 27, 28 points a night because this game would be more suited for Reggie. That's kind of how I see that. I could even see a situation where on bad teams, he would average 30. So that's kind of how I look at that. I think he would, matter of fact, to give you an indication of how he was more efficient than just a chucker, even though he never led the NBA in 3-point attempts, he did lead the league in 3-point makes twice, 1993 and 1997. And in my opinion, in that era, the 2 best 3-point shooters were Reggie Miller and Glenn Rice. And you put those guys in today's game, they would be unbelievable, But that's just how I look at that. But anyway, tell me what you guys think.